Well, we knew that for a while Israel was probably going to be retaliating for that attack early Sunday morning in Israel, an unprecedented direct attack by the Iranians with cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones, over 300 in total. Now, the question was always going to be, what was Israel going to attack? How extensive would that response be, and what would the target be? And it seems, based on what's been coming out, Israel, on the one hand, is holding by what I would call a policy of ambiguity. It's neither confirming nor denying that it was involved in a strike against Iran early this morning, but it's also not saying anything about what that target was. And the Iranians are also staying a bit mum about the nature and scope of the strike. I think that what Israel is trying to do is needle a very delicate thread. On the one hand, we have to assume that this wasn't about just sending a message, we can attack you in Iran. That's been done before. That's nothing new. The Iranians know that. So this has to be important enough of a target to deter the Iranians and get a message across that what they did is not tolerable. But on the other hand, not too big and not too important that the Iranians will feel that they need to be drawn in to a wider and more extensive conflict with Israel.
ساعت 5:30 4:30 صبح صدا انفجار واسه تیر اومد هیچ خبری نبود صدا پد و فند دفاعی بود همین پد و فند هوایی این عزیزان
I think this is probably what we should expect to see from Israel when it comes to the retaliation to that attack this past weekend. But we never know, right? The Iranians now, the ball seems to be in their court. If Israel was going to be doing more, it probably would have done it all at the same time. That would have made the most sense. There's no reason to scale this response. But the Iranians now will have to decide what they want to do. And as we speak, based on how they've been responding, it seems that they also want to contain this, right? They're downplaying the significance of everything. They're saying three things primarily. Number one, the target was not important. Number two, we deflected several of the drones and what tried to attack us. And number three is that the attack didn't even come from outside of our airspace. It came from inside. And why is that important? Whether it's true or not, they want to make it seem that no one was able to infiltrate their airspace. And as Israel is keeping quiet, right? So there's no one to counter and to argue and prove them wrong, contradict them. So everybody can kind of save face, and it would be in Israel's interest for that. On the one hand, we've done something. On the other hand, this is now over. If it was, and assuming the Iranians are describing with accuracy what happens, which our default should always be that they are not, because they are an oppressive, violent regime that lies as their default. But assuming that this was drones and carried out from within Iranian territory, it would tell us two things. Number one, this is not an Israeli Air Force strike, but this is likely something of more of a covert operation, probably carried out by Israel's Mossad, the equivalent of the MI6 and the CIA, so maybe done by Israeli agents or agents working on behalf of the Israeli spy agency. But it was done within Iran, and that's meant to say, we're not violating your airspace, we're not violating your sovereignty, but we are striking back. And that could be a way of signaling, let's keep it down. Let's not increase the flames and the tension here. We've all gotten in our hits, and now we can call it a day. I think it's possible. I mean, look, the Americans have long, since October 7th, right? Since Israel was attacked in that violent Hamas massacre on October 7th, the American policy has always been the same. Keep this conflict isolated, limited, and focused on Gaza. Do not allow it to spread to other parts of the region, primarily either to Lebanon, where there is the Hezbollah Iranian proxy, or to Iran itself. For the Americans to strike such a deal, or it's not necessarily a deal, but basically to say to Israel, keep your response limited, and we will not come after or condemn or criticize, and we will provide you with the diplomatic cover and a continued supply of weapons as you require for the Rafah operation. That wouldn't be a bad deal necessarily for Israel. So if it was really able to, on the one hand, send this message now to the Iranians, and on the other hand, keep the Americans on their side for the Rafah operation, which I would have predicted would have happened anyhow with U.S. support or without U.S. support, I'd say it's not a bad day for the Israeli government. That's a pretty impressive result. I've long believed, and I think that this is something of a prevalent assessment within the Israeli defense establishment. Iran is something of a paper tiger. They do have capabilities. We shouldn't underestimate them. They can cause damage. They were able to launch hundreds of cruise missiles and drones and ballistic missiles at Israel. 99% of them were intercepted. Would we always have that coalition on our side? Probably not, but Israel does have capabilities to be able to intercept most of what they can throw at us. But let's remember, Iran does not have a border with Israel. It doesn't have the ability to send ground forces. It doesn't have the ability to shoot artillery shells. It can send suicide drones or it can send missiles. And Israel does have a response. And what you saw over the weekend, that was just the defense. It wasn't the offense. So that's only when you're playing defense. When you play offense at the same time, you undermine their capabilities furthermore. What does have Israel concerned, though, is Hezbollah in Lebanon. That is up along our border. That is an Iranian proxy with tens of thousands of fighters who could cross into Israel and launch attacks with over 150,000 rockets and missiles that, yes, can overwhelm Israel's missile defense system just because of the sheer size of what Hezbollah has. But with that said also, I think Israel would be able to manage with that. It would not be an easy war. It would be difficult and it would be a challenge for Israel. But Israel does have capabilities, and I think we have to put everything into its right context. These are great threats. These are great challenges, but these are not of an existential nature that Israelis need to fear that this country is coming to an end. That's not what we're facing. I mean, that's been in the cards, unfortunately, since the beginning of this conflict in Gaza, when Hezbollah decided to begin attacking Israel every single day. We just saw this week 18 Israeli soldiers on the Israeli side of the border, some of them severely wounded in a multifaceted attack, including anti-tank missiles and suicide drones launched by Hezbollah. Hezbollah, since October 8th, has pretty much launched close to 5,000 rockets into Israel. That's not normal. Right. And this is being done at the direction of Iran. This is being done out of solidarity, as they claim, at least in Lebanon, with their brothers in arms in the Gaza Strip, aka Hamas. Israel is trying to contain that. Israel has decided not to go to that war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And we're kicking the can down the road. I mean, this is a threat of a greater magnitude than what we face in Gaza. And it's hard to imagine that one day Hezbollah just lays down its arms and says, we're done. So when this will happen, I hope it won't happen. But I think we also have to recognize that after October 7th, policies of containment don't work, right? You can't just keep your enemy and pretend that they're not really there when they're right up along your border and they're plotting how to kill you. So Israel one day might have to confront the Hezbollah enemy on the Lebanon border.